Can you feel the power, folks? There's a reason for that. We got Carter here, Power Hour, LSU, NFL, SEC. It's all there. Please look it up on YouTube. Carter, what's going on today? How are you?
Doing good, Mark. Getting excited. Just got a PS5 a few weeks ago, so I'm gonna be playing the new game. I got it just for the game and maybe the soccer one, but super pumped up about that and super pumped up about the season.
July 19th, I believe, is the date that everyone's awaiting.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
rankings are all over social media. Do you have an issue with the rankings?
Yeah, I wouldn't have put LSU in the top 25 until we actually see what they look like next year. I think by the end of the year they could be top 25 because I'm a big Blake Baker fan. But yeah, LSU at 6 is pretty fair. I think Colorado's defensive ranking is more egregious than LSU's, and yeah, I actually think Ole Miss's defense could be potentially pretty good this year. So I am super excited to see the dynasty modes playing online, all that stuff. It's all kind of new to me. I feel kind of like a boomer because I've not owned a video game system since college, so it's been over a decade. But yeah, I'm learning everything over again. I'm pretty excited.
Well, the distance between me and video games is even greater than that. But,
Huh?
I kind of went through two phases. I went through the teenage years into college, not even into college a little bit. Football, baseball, the sports games I would play. Anyway, then it was out of my life. And then I had kids. And then, boom, with a son, you get back into it. But that was a
Yeah.
long, long time ago. Speaking of rankings, I was just reviewing Athlon. I was looking at Phil Steele. We've got Phil Steele with LSU of a ranking of number 20 in the country, 19 when he applies the schedule. He's got them fifth in the SEC. Athlon, interestingly enough, has LSU at number 11 in the country, substantially higher than Phil Steele, but number 6 in the SEC. You have stated on here that a college football playoff appearance has to be the goal and basically the bottom line objective
Yeah.
for success. That is the breaking point.
Yeah, I'm with you. And look, we all know SEC schedules are tough, but they're not created equal. Even though LSU has to play 2 Power 5 out of conference teams when you're only required to play 1, I think their schedule sets up really nicely for them to make the playoff this year. And 9-3 might be good enough, but 10-2 is definitely attainable. It's just going to come down to the defense, right? But overall, I'm fine with LSU being ranked. They're normally ranked in that range. Some years they're in the top 5, but normally they're in that 7-ish to about 12-ish range. It seems about normal.
The road schedule is pretty favorable for an SEC slate. Most of the tough games at home.
Yeah. Yeah. And, the big game, the team to me in the SEC that is the story I feel this year in college football outside of Colorado, which will always be the biggest story while Deion is still there, just by pure clicks and interest, is Ole Miss. And I think the way that the game sets up, where Ole Miss will be playing their 7th game in 7 weeks, and LSU will be getting a bye week before playing Ole Miss at home, is one of the big swings in favor of LSU going into this year. And it's funny because this will be by far the most hyped Ole Miss team maybe since the Eli Manning years. And this is one of, in terms of hype, probably a middle-ish tier LSU hype cycle here. So that game to me is the biggest game in the SEC in the middle-ish portion of the season, and LSU gets a huge rest advantage.
We posted some win probabilities for a number of teams, including LSU. Certainly took that into account. The first half of your analysis there with the bye week, but didn't necessarily realize that Ole Miss had that kind of run leading into Death
Right.
Valley. So yes, that should factor into that percentage take, which Ole Miss is considered decidedly a little bit better than LSU, but you swing that the home road favor plus that kind of stretch, and it favors LSU. I'm going to throw these rankings at you from Phil Steele. You tell me if anything stands out here as being egregious. So these are position unit rankings.
Okay.
Quarterback 41, running back 66, wide receiver 12, offensive line 6 on that side of the ball.
Yeah, quarterback might be a little too low, but I understand because Garrett just doesn't have a whole lot of starts. So it's understandable. Running backs, that's semi-understandable as well. There is a lot of uncertainty. There's not some proven superstar back there. Offensive line, I would be very interested in the 5 offensive lines he has ranked ahead of LSU. When your 2 offensive tackles are projected first-round picks, and you do return both your guards, and the center is a better overall recruit and athlete than the center who you just lost. So yeah, I think all of those rankings are somewhat fair. So no crazy hot take in LSU's wide receivers being 12. That might be about where I would have them as well.
Offensive line rankings: Georgia 1, Texas 2, Oregon 3, Oklahoma State 4, Florida State 5, LSU 6.
Interesting. I don't know enough about Oklahoma State's offensive line or Florida State's offensive line. I know they're offensive coach Alex Atkins is a really good O-line coach at Florida State. But yeah, 6 is fair. But I think by the end of the season, Mark, they have a legitimate shot of winning the Joe Moore Award.
Defense: line 54, linebackers 22, DBs 36.
Yeah, and that is where it gets interesting.
Defensive line.
Yeah, it's a little bit higher than I thought. But they do return a lot of production at defensive end. Mark, this is on paper the weakest LSU defensive tackle room ever, at least in the modern era. And even pre-Saban, they had some really good defensive tackle rooms, as many people remember the Booger McFarland years. So it's kind of weird seeing them at 54. I thought they would be a lot lower. But if you factor in their defensive end play, they do return a really nice player in Braden Swinson, and they do have some other good recruits there. That makes sense. Linebacker's a little bit bigger of a concern for me, Mark. We'll see how Harold Perkins, moves into the new role. And what was the DB ranking again?
36.
Yeah, and that one to me is fairly high as well. Now, I know a lot of people are probably watching this thinking, well, LSU guy just hates LSU. No, I just try and be as objective as I possibly can. And like I said, all 3 of these units could very well, outperform their expectation. And I'll say this as a guest, as an LSU guest on every kind of neutral show, which this is. You're a national personality. This is, if you are a super diehard, like just college football fan, this will be the perfect litmus test of how much coaching matters versus talent, right? Because so many of these units on the defensive side of the football are returning the same exact players from last year's team to this year's team. So if this defense is better, and let's just say they exceed all those rankings you just gave, then coaching really does matter, maybe a little bit more than one would like to think. Because if Blake Baker really gets this unit, which returns a lot of players who were, to use a video game millennial term, mid, and make them great, then it truly shows you the power of a great defensive coordinator and a great defensive mind on all 3 levels of the defense.